We can now bring in Trisha Shetty, a social activist and lawyer who joins us in the studio. Thank you very much for joining us here on France 24 now. Last month, we had Narendra Modi, who was in Washington for a state visit. Now he's here in Paris for a state visit. It seems that the world's oldest democracies are standing pretty shoulder to shoulder with the world's largest democracy. Is that what you see here?
Undoubtedly. I think, speaking of this, we need to take a step back and go back to 2005, right? When our Prime Minister, then the Chief Minister of Gujarat, was denied a visa, was denied a diplomatic visa, and even further than that, they revoked his tourist visa to enter the United States of America, because under Section 212 of the Immigration and Nationality Act of the United States of America, it bans officials who are credibly responsible for severe violation of religious freedoms of minorities, right? This was in relation to our current Prime Minister's alleged role in the Gujarat riots that saw over 1,000 people killed, anti-Muslim violence, and over tens of thousands of people displaced. Albeit, our Supreme Court of India has given our Prime Minister the clean sheet. This is important to note. But what is also parallelly important to note is the British Foreign Report that was declassified as of recently that said that violence had all the hallmarks of ethnic cleansing, and that Narendra Modi is directly responsible, right? What is also important to note is when BBC, as of last year, published a documentary making alarming links of our Prime Minister to the Gujarat riots that unfolded, BBC's offices were shortly raided. What is also important to note is what Jack Dorsey has said, that his Twitter employees were threatened with arrest, that they would shut down Twitter offices if they did not censor all links that were critical of our administration during the farmers' protest movement, and that all the links that linked to the BBC documentary on Twitter were censored under Elon Musk's rule. So let's just distinguish. I think it's great that the world's largest democracy with the largest youth population, which is India, is being recognized for the critical role it plays within the global scope, right? You cannot protect democracy globally without recognizing India's role, but do not sanitize the image of such a leader who has such severe allegations of violations of human rights against him.
But Trisha, with all that you mentioned, do you get a sense that Western leaders are willing to look the other way when it comes to what goes on at home for Narendra Modi, given the size of India's economy? I mean, just this year alone, we have Air India buying over 200 Airbus planes, Indigo buying 500 Airbus planes, and now we have this initial deal to pick up Rafale fighter jets and submarines.
Sure. So what are the 6 reasons that have been cited for Indo-France relations, right? It's defense, it's the blue economy, it's civil nuclear energy, it's counterterrorism, it's cybersecurity, it's also the assurance of students who will get visas easier to come to France. All of this is good. But again, what are you defending? Right? This is what I go back to President Macron's speech during Armistice, when he said that nationalism is a betrayal of patriotism. Right? He said that a nation must stand up for what gives it life, what is essential, which is its moral values. So how can you talk about the economy and that, you want to do business in India without protecting the people that are breathing air in India? You want to talk about investing in resilient infrastructure, which is what France is saying they're going to do with India. Have they accounted for the fact that India is ranking second largest when it comes to deforestation, second only to Brazil? This is under Narendra Modi's regime from 2005 to 2020, the report that has come out. So again, with our economy, have they accounted for the extreme disparity? Yes, our GDP has grown, but that they've looked at to benefit whom?
Yeah.
What is the unemployment rate? What is the rural unemployment rate? What is the urban unemployment rate? What is the income disparity between the richest and the poorest in India? It's the highest it's ever been.
There was a lot of pressure on President Biden to discuss human rights with Modi. Do you think there's less pressure on Emmanuel Macron?
I'm so glad you brought that up, right? I understand diplomacy. They always say, it's this line that's thrown around, you attack more flies with honey. You need all the players at the table. Great. What happened when President Obama did an interview raising alarms about how he hopes President Biden brings up the issues of minorities and Muslims' rights in India? Our current sitting Chief Minister of India made a statement, and I quote, "There are plenty Hussein Obamas in India. We should prioritize taking care of before going to DC, the Assam police will take care of these people. This is the sort of threatening, Islamophobic, menacing tweet that our sitting chief minister feels comfortable speaking in reference to POTUS.
I want to talk about threats because the Wall Street Journal journalist Sabrina Siddiqui was targeted in the United States and targeted online after she asked Prime Minister Modi a question when he was standing alongside the US President at the White House. She was accused of having an agenda. It seems that whenever a journalist or social activist in India tries to question what is going on, they are automatically targeted and targeted online by the powers that be.
Let's be clear. India currently ranks 161st according to the World Freedom Press Index, right?
But when you talk about that to Indian authorities, they
journalists
seem to
don't
think,
have the right to
but
question.
they seem to think, because I have interviewed India's ambassador here to Paris, and he accused me of having an agenda, and that this so-called list is rigged essentially to keep India down.
I am very transparent. Yes, I do have an agenda. My agenda is to protect democracy and human rights and ensure that dissidents are not targeted, prosecuted, jailed, arrested, killed, and threatened, right? That is my agenda. I'm very clear. You ask me what that is my agenda. I think that falls to universal human values that I'm willing to defend, right? Also, what was critical about that interview that happened in America? I think it was the first time Prime Minister Modi took a question from a journalist. In India, since his term, it's the second time that he's been ruling as Prime Minister. Since 2004, he has not taken one single question from a journalist. And what happened to that journalist? She was subject to extreme vitriol attacks where the US State Department had to put out a statement saying they are concerned, right? So this is what we're being subject to. I'm an activist myself. Every time I have dared to dissent, question the state of affairs when it comes to women in our country whose violence is being looked away because they are, Dalit, Muslim, we get subject to the worst kind of attacks. So many political prisoners are currently in jail under the Prevention of Atrocity against our Terrorism Act, which the burden of proof is on the accused as opposed to the accuser. With just, the process is killing you. So again, do we have the right to question? That is my point. How can you say democracies? What is France doing right now? They're celebrating democratic superpowers coming together. That is great, but you need to defend the democracy in the first place, and you need to defend moral values. What are you willing to defend? And again, this is not an attack on India. India is a country that, that we all love deeply for the same values that France is willing to defend. We as Indians are willing to defend those values. This is just a request. Please stop sanitizing the image of this world leader and do business, but also have the courage, please, to ask him to do better by us, to defend sovereignty, to defend rights that, that hold the world together.
Trisha, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you very much for joining us on the program today. Trisha Shetty there.